Hello, community. Before I begin my story, I'd like to mention that it took me some time to muster the courage to make my story public, as it involves someone I love with all my heart, my mother. I prefer not to give my name, but I am a 48-year-old woman. Everything started one night as we were traveling as a family to Guanajuato, going on a New Year's vacation to spend it in San Miguel de Allende, and to visit the magical towns of that beautiful state. The travelers included my parents, my 2 children, my husband, and me. We were in our car, aware that the journey would be long, so much so that it became night while we were on the road. It was past midnight and I needed to use the bathroom, so I told my husband to stop at the first gas station he saw, and so he did. We arrived at one of those gas stations that are far from everything. I asked if anyone else wanted to go to the bathroom, but no one did. Everyone else was asleep except for my husband and my younger son. So, I got out alone while my family waited in the car. The gas station was almost empty, with only another car parked. But as I entered, its owners were leaving the establishment, so I had the bathroom to myself. While I was doing my business, I heard the door to the ladies' room, which squeaked a lot, open, and I tried to hurry not to prolong the trip, but then I heard the door to the adjacent stall open, and beneath it I saw my mother's feet, recognizable by her shoes and the khaki pants she wore that night. Immediately I said, "Here I am, Mom. Good thing you decided to use the bathroom since we still have several hours of travel left." But there was no response. I found it strange that she didn't answer, so I called out again, "Mom, why aren't you answering?" But again, there was no response. It seemed too strange to me, so I pulled up my pants and left the stall directly to knock on her door, asking her if she was okay, why she wasn't answering because she was scaring me. But suddenly, she began to cry. I knew it was her because it was her voice, the unmistakable sound of my mother crying. In desperation, I knocked on the door, increasingly agitated, asking what was happening, why she was crying like that, and why she wouldn't open the door. But she didn't respond, just continued crying. Then suddenly, I heard the entrance door squeak, and I turned to see who it was. It was my mother. I was pale, speechless as she entered. She looked at me worriedly, asking if I was okay, saying she came looking for me because I was taking too long. I remember she came closer and took my hands, imagining how shocked I must have looked. The first thing I did when I could move was to turn towards the bathroom stall, where my supposed mother was, but there was no one there. I even pushed the unlocked door, and indeed, it was empty. My mother kept insisting I tell her what happened, but all I wanted was to run away from that place. So I took her by the hand and led her back to the car. She followed without understanding what was happening. Before getting into the car so my children wouldn't hear, I told her what had happened. She looked at me so confused, asking if I was sure over and over again, because she said absolutely no one had come to that gas station since I had gone to the bathroom, much less someone wearing the same clothes as her, so it was impossible. I tired of swearing to her what I saw, but feel she didn't completely believe me, attributing it to my being very tired, and merely told me to try and sleep the rest of the way. Obviously, I couldn't convince her, so we got back into the car where my husband looked at me confused, wanting to know what had happened, but I subtly told him I would tell him later. The vacation days passed. We stayed for 5 days, and during that time, of course, I told my husband what happened, but he didn't know what to say either. On the 6th day, we returned home, and the following day, which was a Monday, my husband and I went back to work and my children to school. But that same Monday morning, I received the worst call of my life to this day. It was my father, telling me that my mother had passed away, She died of a heart attack overnight. It was the most painful moment of my life, and although I've learned to deal with it, it's something insurmountable. But the doubt that has always haunted me since that event at the gas station, a week before my mother's death, was whether it had anything to do with her death. Was something trying to warn me of what was going to happen? Or was it just a coincidence? Even though my husband tells me I shouldn't torment myself with this unanswered question, I can't get over it. I need to understand what happened. Good evening, community. My name is Jose Alberto, and for 3 years I worked at a gas station on the outskirts of the city where I lived in the United States, right off the highway. I worked as a cashier in the store of that establishment during the night shift. It's a tough job for many, but for me it really wasn't, since I'm a night person, so I felt very comfortable. Of course, I did witness some violent situations, such as intoxicated individuals arriving and fighting, and several attempted robberies too, although nothing ever escalated too much. But what I had never experienced in my life, and in fact wasn't even a believer of, was the paranormal. Until one of those nights I was working. I had just started my shift, was at the cash register doing some accounting, and waiting for my coworker, who always arrived late, to help me organize some boxes of inventory that had just arrived. It was very calm at that moment, as there was no one around, when suddenly I heard the bell of the main door, but I didn't see anyone entering as the door opened. It wasn't until I peered out that I saw a girl, about 8 to 10 years old, wearing a very dirty pink dress and only one shoe. I was quite shocked to see her like that. The first thing I did was look to see if her parents or someone accompanying her were behind her, but there was no one, not even cars parked or getting gas. It seemed she was completely alone. She approached me and asked if I could help her get home because she was lost, looking completely disoriented and somewhat scared too. I asked her how she had gotten there, where her parents were, but she couldn't answer me, shaking her head from side to side and shrugging her shoulders as if to say she didn't know. It was a very strange and complex situation, so I told her to wait a moment, that I was going to call 911 for help, as they would assist her in finding her parents and getting home. She nodded her head while standing by the entrance door side. Meanwhile, I went to the cash register where the phone was to call emergency services. But before I got there, I heard the bell again indicating the door had been opened, so I turned around immediately thinking the girl had left. But it was my coworker arriving, entering as if nothing, greeting me with a smile and asking how I was. I was surprised that he didn't look at the girl, nor was he startled or anything like that. It was then when I told him I was going to call 911 because the girl at the entrance was lost. But he looked all around and asked me, "Which girl?" I walked back to the door, behind a shelf that blocked my view from the cash register, but when I got there, the little girl was gone. I searched the aisles for her while asking my coworker if she had left when he opened the door, but he looked totally confused, telling me that when he entered, there was absolutely no one, neither outside nor inside the place. I was scared and very confused, but being a minor, I knew I couldn't just let it be. Eventually, people started coming in and we had to serve them, but at a moment when the gas station was empty, my coworker and I took the opportunity to check the cameras, both inside and outside. However, upon viewing the recordings, it showed me talking to myself. When the little girl entered, it also only showed the door opening by itself. My coworker started to laugh nervously, throwing out a curse word or two from the shock. I, on the other hand, felt a pit in my stomach, not sure if it was from fear or the anxiety the situation was causing me. My coworker tells me my face had no expression upon viewing the videos. I was just out of it. And truthfully, I felt like nothing was real. I just couldn't believe it. But it indeed happened. And it took me some time to assimilate the situation, that most likely I had spoken with a ghost, who possibly had lost her life nearby and was lost. We told the manager what happened the next morning. He also saw the videos and couldn't believe it, just like us. But he told us not to tell anyone, and that those videos would be deleted. He also asked my coworker to delete the video from his phone, as he had recorded it to make it viral. But that angered our boss, and he warned us that if for some reason that video was uploaded to the internet, we would be fired. But in the end, that video was the least of my concerns, as I was still very shocked by what had happened to me. Thank you for listening to my story. I wish you all an excellent day or night.